بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في هذا الفيديو سوف نتناول شرح شخصية تعتبر من الرواد الأوائل في البحث في التصميم العلمي وأيضا التكنولوجيا. دعونا نتعرف على هذه الشخصية.
I'm David Merrill. Who is David Merrill? He's an education researcher specializing in instructional design and technology. Merrill was born on March 27, 1937. After completing high school, he was involved in missionary work for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. He is married to Kathleen Merrill, and together they have 9 children and 39 grandchildren. He currently lives in Utah. Education and career. In 1961, Merrill earned a Bachelor of Arts in Secondary Education from Brigham Young University. He earned an MA and a PhD from the University of Illinois in 1964. Merrill has been a faculty member at numerous universities during his extensive academic career. Brigham Young University from 1967 to 1967 and 1968 to 1979. Also in the early 1970s, Merrill was a member of the Select Committee on the Future of Higher Education in the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, chaired by Henry B. Eyring. University of Southern California from 1979 to 1988, Utah State University from 1987 to 2004, where he is now an emeritus professor. Brigham Young University from 2004 to 2009. OSD. Recently, Merrill has been studying the first principles of instruction. Over the course of several years, Merrill evaluated existing theories on instructional design in order to outline common principles when it came to instruction. What he found was that although the principles may have been described differently in various theories, the underlying concepts were similar. Merrill uncovered 5 principles of instruction: problem-centered, activation, demonstration, application, and integration. The problem-solving principle allows learning to happen when students are engaging in solving real-life problems. The word problem is very broad, but in relation to these principles, Merrill defined it as including a variety of activities, more specifically. Activity that is a whole task instead of several parts, something that learners will encounter in their lives after instruction. Show task. More commonly than not, instruction usually begins by presenting learners with a vague list of objectives. What Merrill suggested should happen instead is to begin learning by showing the student a whole example of the task they will be able to accomplish or problem they will be able to solve after it has been taught. Task level. Merrill liked to emphasize studying information as a whole. Traditional teaching often presents information by prerequisite topics that will introduce a whole task or problem. Instead of teaching individual actions and assuming your students can assemble the pieces to perform tasks in the real world, engage them at the whole task level. Merrill said there are 4 levels of performance that successful instructors should use to engage students: the problem, the tasks required to solve the problem, the operations that comprise the tasks, and the actions that comprise the operations. By covering all 4 levels, the task can be learned as a whole. Problem progression. Most problems can be complex. In order to master the complexity, learners must start at an easier level. Once that problem is solved, they can progress to more complex problems, building their skill level over time. Principle 2. Activation. This principle involves acknowledging and incorporating past experiences into the learning process. Instead of jumping into new material head first, it's important to lay a foundation for the new knowledge. The easiest way to do this is base it in something the learner already knows and can relate to. Previous experience learning can happen when past knowledge is described, related or applied to new knowledge, building a sturdy foundation for new learning. By providing learners with an opportunity to show what they already know, instruction can be made more efficient. Structure learning is encouraged when students can use a previous learning structure to help them organize new information. Using existing mental models that can be changed to help understand new learnings can make the process more efficient. If students have no relevant learning structures, it is up to the instructor to provide one. Principle 3 Demonstration. This principle is also described as show me. Instead of just talking about what students have learned, learning happens when they can demonstrate it. Including a portrayal of the information being learned makes it easier to remember and apply. Instead of just talking about what students have learned, learning happens when they can demonstrate it. Demonstration consistency for learning to happen. The demonstrations must be in line with learning objectives. Before presenting any information, it is important to outline the criteria for consistency. If the criteria does not line up with the learning objectives, learner guidance and relevant media, discussed below, will also be ineffective. Learner guidance. Learning is facilitated when the student is guided by somebody else. Instructors can help students focus on the most relevant information in the task by identifying and mapping out structural features. When students become confident in what they are learning, instructors can move away from providing focus and allow the students to do this on their own. It is also important for instructors to provide several examples of the concepts being taught. This will help provide different perspectives and alternate points of view on the subject. When using media, it's important to make sure it has an instructional role and that different forms of media are not competing with one another. For example, Merrill said that text and graphic media can compete for the attention of the learner. The amount of information they are trying to learn. When increasing and incorporating media with instruction, it is also important to make sure it has a meaningful purpose. Principle 4 Application. His principle is also referred to as let me, allowing learning to happen when students use their new knowledge to solve problems on their own. While many instructors use multiple choice questions to practice or test knowledge, application leads to applying new skills in real-world tasks instead. Practice consistency. Like demonstration consistency, learning happens when practicing new skills is consistent with learning objectives. There will be different types of practice, recognizing information, identifying new examples, etc. For each learning goal, but in all cases they must be consistent with one another. Otherwise, no amount of coaching or feedback, explained below, will be effective. Diminishing coaching. Learning is encouraged when problem solving is directed by feedback and coaching, helping to catch and correct errors. Over time, this coaching is slowly removed. Students must also understand that making mistakes is okay, as when they are recognized, they provide an opportunity to remedy the error and avoid making it again. Varied problems. Applying new knowledge to one problem will stunt growth. Practice must be completed by taking several opportunities to use new skills to solve a variety of problems. Providing a range of scenarios and examples gives students Principle 5 Integration. The last principle indicates that learning happens when students can use new knowledge in their day-to-day lives. They can make personal adaptations of the skill, improve upon it, and defend their knowledge to suit their everyday lives. As Merrill said, the real motivation for learners is learning. Reflection. As students discuss, consider, and defend their new skill, learning continues to happen. In order for learners to introduce what they have learned into their daily repertoire of skills, they must be able to effectively defend and share what they creation. Successful learning happens when students can find new ways to create, invent, and explore using their new knowledge, making the skill their own. Learners must go beyond instruction to create, revise, and refocus their new knowledge. An important final stage of the learning experience. While reading about Merrill's principles of instruction, it's easy to apply the learning from each stage to examples we've experienced in the past. Moving forward, it's important to remember these principles, whether you're the teacher or the student. In order to help find success when studying,
وفي نهاية الشرح سوف أقوم لكم بعرض فيديو لديفيد ميريل.
I've been in the instructional design business for almost 40 years. Over that time, I've seen a number of instructional delivery systems come and go. When I first got into this field, educational television was the rage. Everybody had a television studio. We then had the quick peak of programmed instruction, which came and went really quickly. Then we've had computer-based instruction in various forms for the past 2 or 3 decades. We went to multimedia when we were able to do that. We've had all of these things come and go, and people spent a lot of time getting involved with the technology. It's interesting to me, however, as we move to the internet, and things have become easier and easier to do, so to the point where almost anybody can create a website these days, that the effectiveness of the instruction, my impression is, has gone down, that we've become less effective. It's so easy to dump information onto the web that many of the sites that are called educational sites or instructional sites are really just information dumps. And at one point people called this shovelware. Shovel your course onto the internet. And most of this is very ineffective. In fact, much instruction, even some that's created by highly reputable firms, sometimes turns out to be relatively ineffective. Because it violates principles that we know are important for learning to take place. Over the past several years, I've done a thorough study of many of the instructional design theories and a lot of the research on instruction out there. And from that, we've tried to extract these first principles. And while there are lots of details of these principles, the things that make the most difference are really simple. First of all, we need to show people what we're trying to teach them instead of just tell them. So much instruction is tell, and we don't show them what to do. Second, we need to give students an opportunity to practice what they've learned, and that doesn't mean just to answer multiple choice questions, which we often refer to as ask what they've learned or remember, but it means to get them involved in classifying instances, or get them involved in actually carrying out a procedure, or getting them involved in making predictions or troubleshooting in more complex tasks. And so consequently, much of what's called practice is not practice at all. It's not really application. And finally, students, we have all kinds of talk of motivation. People have indicated that motivation is perhaps the most important thing of all. Some people have said if students are motivated, we don't have much else to do. Well, this is just plain not true. If you lead a horse to an empty well, they're still going to die of thirst if there isn't water in it. And we can motivate students to pieces, and if there isn't substance and we have violated other principles in the instruction, they're still not going to learn. In fact, we often have a false concept of what motivation is. We think motivation comes from animation and games and edutainment, when in fact these are maybe attention getting, but real motivation comes from learning. Real motivation comes when students are able to do something they weren't able to do before. And real learning takes place when we implement basic principles of instruction. And those basic principles include at least demonstrating what you're going to learn, having the student actually do what they're learning, and doing this in the context of a real-world problem. The best motivation of all is for students to be able to learn some real-world task. And I guarantee you that answering multiple choice questions is not a real-world task. So students want to be able to do things. They take courses because they'd like to be able to do things. They'd like to be able to do something they couldn't do before. If we can identify what that is, and we can present that as the very first part of our instruction and say at the end of this course, at the end of this module, you'll be able to do this task, or you'll be able to make these predictions, or you'll be able to perform in some way, and then show them what they need to do in order to complete that whole task or perform in that way, their motivation is going to be greatly increased. So in summary, it just seems to me that there are three very essential things that I think everyone knows, but we don't seem to do it very much in our instruction. And that is, we need to demonstrate what's going to be learned, we need to give students a chance to apply what they're going to learn, and we need to do that in the context of real-world problems. So I think this is what I found, and I'm very discouraged as I look at the internet to see so many courses out there that violate these very basic, simple principles. Obviously, there's some subtleties in these things, and there's some details, and in this particular presentation, we'll talk a few of those details, but there are more. But even if we just talk about the basics and we can have demonstration and application and problem-centered, we're going to dramatically improve the instruction that's out there. My hope is that those of you who are viewing this video or participating in this course will be able to pick up some ideas that will help you to create more effective instruction, more efficient instruction that will enable students to really learn.
Hi, I'm David Merrill. I'm an emeritus professor at Utah State University. I'm also a visiting professor at Florida State and an independent consultant for instructional effectiveness. They ask about what's innovative in technology, and I guess my response is I'm less interested in what's innovative than I am in how we use what's innovative. It seems to me we have a new gadget to play with about every day. But my interest is really how do we make instruction effective, efficient, and engaging. And it seems to me that one of the things we've pioneered over the past 10 years is first principles of instruction. The centerpiece of that is that learning is promoted when students are engaged in a problem-centered instruction strategy. Rather than teaching a lot of topics and then trying to give students a project at the end of the course, we feel it's much more effective if we get students engaged right from the beginning in solving real-world problems, teaching them the skills they need to solve those problems, and then having them apply those skills to a progression of increasingly more difficult problems as they go. We found this increases the engagement of the students, makes them more motivated, helps them retain the instruction much better. It's really a combination of tutorial instruction, problem-based instruction, and then we try to get students to collaborate and to critique one another and to do it all online. So this is kind of a combination of some of the current innovative movements in instruction in try to bring them all together in a unified way, which we think and have demonstrated makes instruction more effective. Thank you.
في نهاية الشرح تابعنا فيديوهات للباحث ديفيد ميريل. أتمنى أني شرحت ببساطة ووصلت لكم المعلومة بكل سهولة، وأتمنى لكم متابعة ممتعة، وشكرا.